Chocolatiers. Today we're going to talk about the difference between wheat flour and whole wheat flour and the impact that they will have on your baking. So we need to start by talking about where these flours come from. So wheat is an agricultural product that grows in long stalks with wheat berries on top. So those berries of goodness have three parts to them. There's the endosperm, the bran, and the germ. So both the wheat flour and the whole wheat flour come from the same plants, but they use different parts. So the wheat flour is only the endosperm, whereas the whole wheat flour is all three parts. Whole wheat flour has the endosperm, the bran, and the germ. The bran adds fiber and some B vitamins, and the germ adds vitamin E and oils. So a lot of times people think of whole wheat flour as being healthier than plain wheat flour. And that's not necessarily wrong, but I think it's important to point out exactly what the whole wheat flour has that this flour doesn't. You know, vitamin B and vitamin E, the more vitamins you can get, awesome. And fiber helps your digestive system. So whole wheat flour is not the only way to incorporate fiber into your diet. And you don't need to only eat whole wheat. Neither of these are bad or good. And we are going to talk about the ways that they affect your baking. If you are thinking more from a nutrition standpoint, everybody's health is different, right? You know what's best for you, and consult with a registered dietitian or nutritionist, you know, for more information and planning, but each person is different. You should not stay away from either one. You should accept both of them into your life, but just understand what each brings to the table, and then you can make more informed decisions for yourself. So we're going to start by focusing in on our wheat flour. It is very soft and powdery. That is because the endosperm has a very high starch content along with protein, and that protein is called gluten. So picture it like a white sand beach, really soft on your toes and starchy. The gluten in here is also in the whole wheat flour, but in this it is uninhibited by anything else. So your gluten is made of two parts. There is glutenin and gliadin. Glutenin, picture like a bodybuilder, right? Very strong and rigid. Glutenin is instrumental in giving you the height on your baked products. So the yeast is going to leaven this up, but the glutenin from the flour is going to make sure that it stays nice and tall. If that glutenin is inhibited, that's whenever your product will like sink down and then it will get denser. It could also get chewier, and in breads, not such a good thing, but in other baked goods, sometimes you want more density. So we talked about glutenin. Now gliadin is the second part of gluten. Gliadin, picture like a ballerina dancer. Very strong, very flexible. This is what gives your dough elasticity. So let's look at, this is just wheat flour and water, right? Look how stretchy that is, right? So that is the gliadin hard at work. Your gliadin will give your breads and other baked products a nicer mouthfeel. If it was all the glutenin, it would be very rigid and could get tough very quick. All right, now on to whole wheat flour. So whole wheat flour is also pretty soft, but you can feel some granules in there also. And that is because the whole wheat flour is made of the endosperm, the bran, and the germ, all three parts. Remember, wheat flour is just the endosperm. So yes, whole wheat flour has the gluten and the starch, but in addition to it, it's also got that bran and that germ. The bran and the germ are not as starchy and soft. So whenever it's ground up, that's why you can feel some of those granules. So we had the white sand beach over here. This is a white sand beach with some shards of glass in there also. Now, how that affects baking is that glutenin and gliadin, they're doing their best to work to create that rigid structure and then some elasticity to it. The shards of glass, the bran in here, is kind of cutting at those. So that is why a lot of times you will notice that your whole wheat products are denser, because the gluten is inhibited. See how this is stretching, but the gliadin breaks. Those glass shard pieces take longer to absorb the water. They will not absorb it to the full capacity as starch. So even after it's baked, you will still feel that texture difference, which in some cases is very nice. It's a wonderful added complexity to your dish. Other times though, you do want something very soft. In those cases, remember that you're gonna wanna stick with your wheat flour. So we've talked some about how the different types of flour will impact your baked goods, but let's make that a little bit more practical and applicable to what you're doing at home. If you look through the Chef It recipes, you will notice that the whole wheat tortillas and the pizza dough, they have whole wheat flour in it, but it's not at 100%. There's also wheat flour. I find that using a combination of the two will give you the best finished result. If you want some whole wheat flour in your diet, just replace a part of your wheat flour. And this also comes down to personal preference to a point. If you eat a lot of whole wheat items, and if you are very used to that denser, chewier texture and you like that, then whenever you look at a recipe, you can probably start with replacing half of your wheat flour with whole wheat flour, which means if it calls for 2 pounds of flour, use 1 pound of wheat flour, 1 pound of whole wheat flour. If you know that you are a little bit more sensitive to that density and it comes across as gummy and unpleasant to you, then you're gonna wanna start at a much lower percentage. So maybe 10% to start out and see how it goes. And if you really like the texture and the flavor, maybe the next time you make it, you can go up to 20% and see how that is. I just recommend starting a little bit lower, and the more you make the product, the more you can work up to maybe adding some more of the whole wheat flour in. Also, maybe you're just happy at the 10%, and that's totally fine too. Or you're just happy only using wheat flour. All options are fine. This is one more reason why measuring with the scale and measuring in grams or ounces is better than measuring in cups. Whenever you're using cups, you're confined to using those quantities that you have a cup for. If you're gonna go with weight, it makes it so much quicker because you're not changing from a tablespoon to a cup to a third of a cup to who knows what. You're just in ounces the whole time, or grams, but this is America, so I'm gonna use ounces. I like my freedom units. So if you can get yourself used to weighing out your ingredients, once you go to playing around with recipes and trying to make them your own, it is easier to track the changes that you have made whenever you're just adding or subtracting a couple ounces than when you're also thinking about converting teaspoons and cups and tablespoons. All right, now let's go right back into your wheat flour and talk about types of wheat flour very quickly. So the most common that you'll find, and the easiest to find in the grocery store, is all-purpose flour, and that is what many recipes call for because they know that a lot of people at home will have that in their pantry already. All-purpose flour is kind of a middle-of-the-road protein content. So you can use it for bread, or for pie crust, or for cookies, or for cakes. Your breads might be a little softer, and your cakes might be a little bit more coarse, but it'll work. It'll get you your product. Now, if you're going to be making a lot of bread, go ahead and buy the bread flour. The way that it compares to all-purpose flour is it has a higher protein content. So that means it has more gluten, which means there's more available to build that structure, a little bit more rigid structure that you really want in a bread, right? Think about the texture of a bread versus a cake, right? A cake is much softer. So that's why there's cake flour on the other end. That has less protein. Cake flour is also bleached. That allows it to absorb more moisture. It also allows you to make high ratio cakes. High ratio means that there is more sugar in your formula than there is flour. Now that is important for shelf life because sugar will minimize bacteria and mold growth. It also, in a less scientific way, like it makes the cake sweeter, of course, and it will allow you to hold on to more of that moisture, and so your cake will taste and feel fresher for a little bit longer. The fourth type is pastry flour. Pastry flour can be bleached, but you can also find ones that are unbleached. Say all-purpose can be bleached or unbleached. Pastry flour has a lower protein content than all-purpose flour. Really is great for like pie crusts, because pie crust you really don't want to overwork that gluten. And so if you start with a flour that already has a lower protein content, there is not as much gluten to overwork. So you're just helping yourself out a little bit. A lot of baking is about manipulating your gluten development. So we will not go in depth on all of those ways. We'll have some more videos following this. Functionality of ingredients is important, and there will be many videos about that. And then mixing methods are very important also. Stay tuned if you want to get a real good look at gluten development, how to manipulate it, what type of gluten development are best for which bakery products. Chefeteers, thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope that you are gonna go make yourself an amazing dinner tonight. We'll see you soon. Thank you.